Okay, good morning, students. So this is first lecture, and as we all know that this is our food and beverage service operation subject, and the code is BHMCT 40318. So in this semester, you are going through with the alcoholic beverages, what all alcoholic beverages are there, and what is the classification of alcoholic beverage. Right, and then we started with fermented drinks. So as of now, we have covered most of the fermented drinks, and we have done beer actually, and we started wine, and these two are the major fermented drinks. Others are cider and perry. So as we are on wine, so we have covered the table wines or still wine. We have covered the red wine, white wine, and today we are going to start the new wine, which is sparkling wine. And especially what is in the sparkling wine, we are going to learn about champagne, right? So let me open up the PPT and then we'll start. So let's get started with the topic, which is champagne. So just to pay attention on some important points related to champagne. So as we have already discussed this thing, that champagne is something which comes under the category of sparkling wine. We all know this thing, one point. And sparkling wine is what? That a wine that contains carbon dioxide, right? But in huge amount. And the next thing is related to champagne. That champagne is a sparkling wine. A famous line is or sentence or statement is related to champagne that all champagnes are sparkling wine, but all sparkling wines are not champagne, right? So champagne is a sparkling wine, but we cannot call all sparkling wines as champagne because champagnes are those which used to be produced in France, and where in France? Champagne region. So there is a region called as Champagne, which is in France, right? So the drinks, especially the sparkling wines that are going to be produced in Champagne region of France, they would be known as champagne, right? The rest of the sparkling wines or rest of the wines that contains carbon dioxide, they will come under the category of sparkling wine, but not in the champagne. For an example, if we are going to produce champagne or sparkling wine in India, right? We are using the good quality of grapes. We are using the same method from which, like the method that used to be used for the production of champagne. So we have used the same method in India, right? But the final product will be considered as as a sparkling wine, not the champagne, because it is mandatory to use those grapes that are grown in Champagne region. It is mandatory to use the same water or atmosphere should be why we are saying that Champagne region is important. The atmosphere over there is a kind of good atmosphere for the growth of grapes, and that's why we used to call it champagne. Otherwise, rest of the wines that contains carbon dioxide will come under the category of sparkling wine. So this is just a small introduction related to it. So don't get confused with the sparkling wine. Champagne itself is a sparkling wine, but it is a sparkling wine which comes from the Champagne region of France. Okay. So moving further. So introduction to champagne. So champagne is a sparkling wine as we have discussed, grapes that being used in the production of champagne are from Champagne region, which is in France. Next, champagne is one that produced by Methode Champenois, right? This is also an important point. What makes the difference? So champagne are champagnes are those sparkling wines that used to be produced through the Methode Champenois. So we'll be learning this particular method in this lecture. That what is it? What important points are there in the Methode Champenois? What makes it different with the other methods, right? And what all other methods are there, and which type of quality they used to be produced or we can get with the other methods, right? And moving further, grapes. So there are only 3 grapes that that comes that people consider as a very good quality of grapes. 2 are black and 1 is white. So the black grape is Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier, and then Chardonnay. Chardonnay is the white one, right? And as we all know that this is a small question, like which component of a grape releases color? A small question for you, student. Which part of the grape, which component of the grape that releases color? Can anyone answer? Which part of the grape? Skin. Very good. So never forget this thing. The whole grape has 4 components that we have already discussed. One is stalk, then skin, then pulp, and seed. So stalk gives the bitter or tannin flavor, right? And skin gives the color, pulp gives the juice, and seed, they used to give some acidic and tannin flavor. So similarly, if anyone is going to produce red wine or a wine which they need to be in color, then they are required to use the skin also. So if they are going to produce white wine or lighter wine, okay, we'll talk about white wine, then we are required to remove the skin. So if we need to produce rose wine, then we are required to use little amount of skin or for lesser time, so that once the desired color will be there in the wine, then we can remove it. So let's back to the champagne. So these are the 3 grapes that you are able to see on your screen, that these are the good quality of grapes that are being used in the production of champagne. So some facts that we have already discussed, we'll go a little bit quick on this point. 300 years back, there is a would say a name, Dom Perignon, right? It the person was a monk who invented this thing, and earlier it was used for the French kings, and commercially in 1700, people they started selling it in 1700, but in the France only, and worldwide in this 18th century. So champagne being known to the world in 18th century, and then 3 times more gas than the beer. This is a very important thing to be and to keep in our mind, that the carbon dioxide, the amount of carbon dioxide is 3 times more than the beer. Okay. So why I'm taking pause? Because some of your classmates are joining right now. Akshay Kumar, he has joined, I think, for multiple times, and Akshay Kumar, even there are 2 names, two students with same name is on my screen. Okay. Moving further, so this is also an important thing and an interesting thing. The cork, the cap, right? The cork is a cap of a wine or champagne, and the cork can reach up to the speed of 40 miles per hour, 64 kilometer per hour. Once it will get open, so it can reach a speed of 40 miles per hour, and this is a huge thing. And champagne cork can travel some distance. This is also again an interesting thing, as and it all happens just because of the huge amount present, huge amount of CO2 present in the champagne. And the travel is longest travel that is being recorded 177 feet, which is 54 meters. So you people can imagine what 54 meters, like if one person has opened the champagne bottle over here, then the cork dropped and it covered 54 meters. All right. And then sorry. Okay. In a 75 ml bottle, what is there? So champagne, there are 49 million bubbles approximately. So these are some interesting facts. The 49 million bubbles, and all are just because of the carbon dioxide. And some more points are there. So Dom Perry Paraganan, this is the main, like this is the name of a person, like and who invented this thing, right? And then champagne bottle produced each year 337 million. Now, like maybe the figures can be vary, uh, but this is the approx figure. And then champagne exports more than 190 countries. And moving further, now we will be covering the production method. Okay. Again, like I'm repeating why I'm taking pause, because some of your classmates, I need to make them in. That's why I need to open up that participant list. Okay. So now, as we all know that we have discussed for multiple times that every production starts with the process which is known as harvesting of grapes. So once the harvesting is done, what we used to do, we are required to do destocking, like huge amount of stock. If it is attached to the bunch of grapes, then it is required to remove. And then what next? Crushing. Again, like we all know that crushing is required. Why? Can anyone tell me why we need to perform this activity? Why there is a need of crushing the grapes, grape berry? It is very simple and small thing. Yes, students. Can anyone answer? What is there in crushing? Okay, like don't like say why there is a need to crush the grapes. Just tell me what do you feel that what going to be happen in this particular step. We can answer just by checking the name, the heading. It is crushing. What do you think? What would be happening over here in this particular step? No one can answer.
So to break down the grapes into molecular form.
Very good. Not molecular form, but just to break the grape so that juice can be extracted from the grape berry. And why this thing is required? Because next step is fermentation, and in fermentation we need to add yeast, and yeast can only react once there is sugar content, and we need a liquid form, right? So that's why we used to crush the grape berry. or in simple word, they just break the berry with the pressure method or some other methods are there. And then what will happen? The same, like the grape berry releases the juice, and that particular mixture is called as must. So crushing with the name, we can easily get to know that what thing can be happened over here, what kind of activity it would be. So crushing is something like we are going to crush something, break something. So what we are going to break over here, we are talking about grapes, grape berries. Okay. Am I audible, students? Can anyone acknowledge me if I am audible? Maybe there was some internet issues. I hope my voice is audible. So moving
Yes, sir.
further, thank you so much. So moving further, crushing, then press. Why we need to press this thing over here in particular champagne production? We are required to separate the content in this step only. Earlier, if we remember the white wine or red wine production, we used to separate the solid material little bit in the middle of the production process. Why over here? Like there is a reason we'll discuss in further slides. But in red wine, we used to do this particular process after once we got the desired color, right? That particular step is maceration, macerate, right? So after that fermentation process, then fermentation, we all know that we need yeast, right? And each grape contains the natural yeast also, which is known as wild yeast also, right? A white layer of on a grape berry is known as wild yeast, and which helps in the starting of fermentation process. And to raise the fermentation process, what all we need to do, we need to do some extra yeast. And you will come to know related to the champagne production, sometimes it is required to add some extra sugar or artificial sugar also. And then aging, which is maturation process. And then what next? Blending. Okay, now see, we are able to see a new word on our screen, liquor de trage. Like I would say that do not go for the pronunciation in starting again, like as I always say, just see the spelling and pay attention on the spellings, right? Because if you will not spell properly, or then you will not be able to write it properly. And if you will write wrong word, then the meaning would be wrong, because these words are in French, or these are French words. Okay, now liquor de taraj. So again, this is a new step which makes it different from the other. Yes, Arjun.
Your voice is not audible, sir.
Is it happening with everyone? Okay. I hope. I think like there is an internet issue. That's why it is happening, my dear Akshay Kumar. You have joined, I think, for more than 20 times. Let me open the PPT.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, Arjun.
I want to say something about the this that why I'm joining late in this class. Sir, I have already joined in this class, but I'm doing some work that join in this meeting. But just
Oh,
I am looking, I am joining late this class. Why, sir? Why is
so where are we? Okay, we were on this step, liquor de taraj. So in champagne, this is a new step, and the other name of this particular step is second fermentation. Like from this particular step, second fermentation used to be started, right? So fermentation or champagne is something which requires two fermentations, right? And these steps from harvesting till blending, that comes under the category of first fermentation, and from liquor de taraj till end, the whole, like these whole steps are come, like they comes under the category of second fermentation. So what would be the next thing? Second fermentation. From this step we are going to start the second fermentation, then remuage. These are the new words. I would say that you all must write down these steps, so that like the time, at the time when we would be discussing these steps, so it would be easier to answer the questions. Then freezing the bottleneck, right? Crushing, uh like crushing would, I would say it is not required over here. The major step is freezing bottleneck, then removal of the sediments, right? And one by one, like the moment I'll be opening up the whole steps, then you'll be learning why there is a need to freeze the neck, how can we remove the sediments, right? And dosage, like why there is the need to add some more more wine, which is champagne, right? And then got. So these are the major steps. Now we are going to start with the production process. One thing I want to tell you, that as we have already discussed two types of wine, red wine and white wine. The initial steps would be quite same with all type of wines. For an example, if we are going to produce fortified wine, the initial steps like harvesting, destocking, crushing, and starting of fermentation would be the same one, right? So in next steps, like what I'll do, I'll start from the major step that is new to this particular, like that the wine we are discussing, right? We'll start with the new step. So this is now, before moving further, let's I would like we'll discuss about this particular method, which is method de champenois. And as we have discussed earlier, that this particular method is something which is required to produce sparkling wines, right? And it is quite complicated. Why complicated? Because like you will be learning in other slides. And then the process is followed in the Champagne region of France. So method is champenois. From the name, like we can have a judgment that this is a method that produce champagne, and champagnes are those which comes from the Champagne region. So by this mean, what has happened, or that method is champenois is something which is being used in the Champagne region, right? And then next is the best sparkling wines are known as champagne, right? I'm sorry. So the best sparkling wines are known as champagne. And why they are so best, or we can say that why they are so expensive, because most of like they to produce a champagne, it requires more than 7 years or up to 7 years. So that's why it is quite expensive. sparkling wine. And the next one is, so Dom Perignon, a monk that introduced champagne to the world. This is what we have already discussed in the previous slides, that this was the person who invented this particular thing, who introduced champagne to the world. Then champagnes are expensive, as we have discussed, that the production process goes up to 7 years. Then, like, we can bottle that particular champagne. And the moment you will be learning the production process, then you will come to know that how delicate or how important all those steps are. That's why the champagnes are expensive. So talking about production process, so we all know that harvesting is the first step when the grapes like reaches to the actual stage, and then it is required to harvest. If we will cross the actual time, then what will happen? The sugar content of the berries will be consumed by the plant or by the vine. Vine mean to say, I'm talking about the plant, the vine that starts from bean. Okay. And if we harvest before time, then what will happen? You'll not get a appropriate sugar content in the grape berry. Next, harvesting can be done by both ways, as we have already discussed, manually and mechanically. So manually is something which gives a good quality of grapes. Reason behind, because the person is picking up one by one, and mechanical, because like vineyards are like there are big vineyards, and for those big vineyards, it is quite suitable that we should opt mechanical, like we can opt the mechanical method. Next one is stemmer crusher. So stemmer crusher, stem, we are going to crush the stems, something like this particular activity going to be happen. So stemmer crusher, this removes the stems from the grape bunches and crushes the grapes, but does not press them, right? So what we have learned over here, that we are not required to press the whole grapes. Firstly, we are required to separate the stem and crush the grape, but do not press it, so that juice can be released. So this helps in the fermenting or fermentation process. So yeast is something that going to be react with the sugar content, and sugar content can only be released once the grape will be crushed. And crushing can be done by following method. These are the methods: hydraulic, right? And then revolving, and cylinders, pneumatic bars. So these four methods we have already covered in the white wine as well as the red wine. So I have shown the pictures also in the previous production processes of those two wines, red wine and white wine. So we'll be not including these things in this particular process. Now, some use the old method, which is foot pressing, as it is the old method, and people used to be press the grapes with bare foot, then crushed grapes. The mixture of crushed grapes are known as must. So from like now onwards, I would say that every time, like during the lecture, I would be asking some terminology, right? For an example, what is must, what is Vikaraj, what is dosage, right? So why I'm saying, because in every PPT, I used to highlight these points or these words or these terminology. Reason behind that, you can write on your journals or while you are preparing your notes, right? Because these are the important terminology. So crushed grapes are known as must, and freshly pressed juice is separated from the skin, as like I have like told in the previous slide, that pressing over here, why pressing is required little early, because with this particular step, the production person used to separate the solid material I apologize, student. I think like the internet issue is quite like frequent. That's why it is happening. So I just check the wires and all. Okay. So what we were discussing that in the champagne process, it is required to separate the solid material, especially skin, so that they cannot get the more color, as like we are not going to produce the red wine. So champagne is kind of a mixed color. It is not a dark in color, it is not light in color, it has like I would say the medium color generally. Even like there are some like now what is happening, variety of anything can be available in the market. So major step of this particular activity is major reason that skin, if skin will be removed from the content, that then it is done to avoid the must from taking the color of the skin. Now moving further, fermentation. Now we are going to start the first fermentation. So see the difference earlier, as we had discussed that related to the red wine and white wine, the fermentation process used to be done in stainless steel, or it can be done in the wooden vats also. But especially in white wine, we have discussed that fermentation used to be done in stainless steel. But over here in the production of champagne, the first fermentation used to be done in the wooden vats. So do not get confused with the word vat and container. Like we can change these, interchange these words, but over here what is required, that like the term vat is quite relevant to this particular activities. So that's why we used to use vat. Then next step is, so fermentation starts about 8 hours after pressing. So see what is happening over here. The moment we have done the pressing step, we have completed the pressing step in which we have separated the solid material, we add yeast to start the fermentation process, and it will take 8 hours to start the first fermentation. With yeast needs 8 hours to react upon sugar, right? So a dry still wine is produced through this fermentation. Dry mean to say, as we have discussed, this is the term which is known as like the wine contains no sugar or very less sugar. That particular wine is termed as dry wine. Then a still wine mean to say nothing is there, no spirit over here, right? And no, I would say any aromatic thing is not added into this wine. So that particular wine or state is called as still wine. And then temperature maintained. The required temperature for the fermentation is 18 to 20 degrees Celsius. And this is also an important thing we all must know about yeast and fermentation, that yeast cannot work if the temperature goes up, like if temperature goes up to 30 or 32 degrees Celsius, right? And similarly, if temperature would be chilled, then again, like yeast cannot work. Then it is required to leave the wine in cask. Okay, so fermentation process goes up to 5 months, right? So once the yeast has been added, it will take 8 hours to get the fermentation process started, maintain the temperature 18 to 20 degrees Celsius, and leave this particular mixture for 5 months. And can anyone tell me what will happen in this particular step? Like after 5 months, what will be there in the particular content or the wooden vat, what we will get after 5 months?
Sir, wine gets reduced.
Okay, come again, Mohammed Bash, because your voice was cracking.
Sir, I'm saying that wine gets reduced.
Okay, wine get reduced. Okay, okay. Over here, like it will not be happen, right? Because this is just a fermentation process, and you are relating your point with the maturation process and the aging process, right? So fermentation process is something we are producing alcohol, and the step or the answer that you have given, it is related to the aging process one when the alcohol is already there in the content, and just because of the alcohol it gets reduced because of the evaporation process, or like the quality of the alcohol, evaporation quality of the alcohol. That's why it gets reduced. But over here in fermentation process, earlier it was just a must, mean to say crushed grape juice, right? And once the yeast has been added and you have left for 5 months, now the result would be a wine, a juice, a liquid that contains alcohol plus carbon dioxide. This is what you will get after 5 months. Earlier, there was no alcohol before 5 months. Earlier, there was no carbon dioxide, mean to say both of the things will be obtained just after the 5 months. So this is what I wanted to ask you, right? So fermentation, even like we have paid a lot attention on this thing, and have like used to be focused on this particular thing, that fermentation equals to yeast plus sugar. And if we go further, yeast plus sugar equals to alcohol plus CO2. Just see this formula, or like this is the way that I used to learn this particular phenomena, what is fermentation, and the same thing that I feel that it is quite easy to understand. Okay, moving further. After that, it is racked and fined during this period. See, during the white wine and red wine, the fining used to be done. Fining is something when we used to clear the wine. Fining is used to be done in the last steps. But over here, it has to be done immediately after the fermentation, because it has been 5 months, and then 5 months past that you are you have kept the whole content, right? And now it is required to do the fining process, and fining process is as simple or as same as it is there in white wine and red wine. We need a protein product, right? A product which contains protein. The special thing is isinglass, which is a gallbladder of a fish. Which fish? Sturgeon fish. So they used to put that isinglass in the liquid, and all those sediments and the bacterial like those things that can spoil the wine, they'll get interacted or attracted with the isinglass, and then we can remove that. So you will get a clear and fine wine. Okay. So next thing is this process. The process is quite similar, as we have already discussed. The process is quite similar as it is there in the white wine. Okay, Tushar Kapoor or Tushar Prabhakar, do you want to say something?
Sorry, sir.
Okay, you want to say sorry? Okay, so moving further. Now we have done with the fining process. We have got a clear wine, right? So we are on a stage. Now we have a clear wine. Now our champagne is ready to be blended. Now blending is something which requires, like, blending is a process in which we mix 2 or 3 things together. So right now we are talking about wines, especially champagne. So we are going to blend some champagnes, but remember one thing, those champagnes mean to say we are required to blend those things. Okay, just give me a moment, like I need to add someone. So blending is required, or blending can be possible if we mix 2 or 3 champagne. And by saying champagne, what does it mean? That we are required to use sparkling wine that produced in the Champagne region only. So Champagne, like, one thing that we are required to understand, that Champagne region is not a small thing. It may have, not may have, it has like so many sub-regions, right? For an example, like I'm just giving you an example that if we talk about Punjab, in Punjab there are many, like there are districts, 22 or 23 districts, right? And then under the districts there are cities, there are villages, right? And if we go deeper, then in cities, there are societies and all. By this way, similarly, the region Champagne, like the same thing is there in the Champagne region. Champagne is the region, then it has some sub-regions, then sub-regions, then sub-regions. So if again, I'm continuing my example, that if we are producing something in Amritsar, right? So in blending process, what we will do, we are asking for a same kind of sparkling wine, but from Jalandhar or from Mohali or from other city. But it must be from the same region, which is Punjab, right? So this is what I want to say over here, that blending has to be done in the Champagne region itself. It is not like that one champagne that we are going to produce in this year and we can blend with the Italian sparkling wine, or the other region of France, which is Alsace. We can take the sparkling wine from the Alsace, right? There is another region which is Côte d'Iron, right? Val de Loire. So these are the other regions. So we cannot get the wines from other regions. We are required to blend the champagne from the wines, especially sparkling wine, which has been made in the Champagne region only. And can anyone tell me why blending is required? Why anyone goes for this particular step? A small question. Why there is a need, a production process field, that we are required to blend the content? Okay, it is so simple. To reach the desired quality. Like I have discussed a lot, even we people have discussed a lot, that sometimes it happens that we do not get a good quality of grapes, field, atmosphere, production process, right? And in result, what happens? We do not get the good quality of, or the as per these standards, we do not get the wine as per these standards. So what we can do over here, we can mix with the good quality of wines that we have already produced in the previous years. So similarly, same thing used to be happen in champagne. So sometime blending is required just to reach the desired quality, right, taste, or as per these standards. So after finding, the blending process should be started. The another name of blending is assemblage, right? So this is also an important thing that we must learn, that sometime in your question paper, you will get just the word assemblage instead of blending. So don't get confused. That's why I've written both of these words. So in this step, the clear wine is blended with the wine from different vineyards of Champagne region. This is an important thing that I'm putting pressure. Vineyards, but in the Champagne region only. So it is required to achieve the desired quality or acidity and all, right? That's why blending is required. So blending is done by the expert person. It cannot be done by any person, right? And then the other name that we have already discussed, that the other name of blending is assemblage. Now moving further. Okay, now we have reached to the secondary fermentation. So I've we have learned that the step from harvesting to blending. So these steps are these steps comes under the category of first fermentation, and secondary fermentation will be started from the Likhat Taraj. And method of Champagne is being divided into two steps: first fermentation, second fermentation. Now, so this process is done in the bottles. So this is again an interesting thing that makes the Champagne different from the other wines. So second fermentation is used to be done in bottle instead of vats, container, or any other thing. Just remember, this is not the maturation process. Maturation or aging process will come later on. And why we need second fermentation? Reason behind the major reason is to get more and more carbon dioxide, right? So these are the reasons. That's why there are 49 million bubbles approximately can be there in a 750 ml of bottle. So first fermentation will with the help of first fermentation, we can get some amount of carbon dioxide, and in second fermentation, we'll get more amount of carbon dioxide. Okay. So Likhat Taraj. So this is a small picture, simple picture that gives the whole story that what is going to be happen in Likhat Taraj. See, there is sugar, as I've discussed in the first slide or second slide, that in Champagne there are some steps in which we are required to add some artificial or these type of sugars. Cane sugar, cane sugar mean to say like the sugar, the crystal sugar that we are using at home, it is being produced from the sugar cane, right? So that sugar plus yeast in a bottle and close it with a cap, second fermentation will be there in the bottle. And see what will happen, carbon dioxide will be there in the bottle itself, will remain be in the bottle. So students, just give me a moment. Okay, yes students, I apologize, there was a pause. Now, so what we were discussing, that in this particular step, there are like less chances that carbon dioxide will get released from the bottle, because in this step, bottle will be closed with a special cork, and in the result, we'll get a good amount of carbon dioxide remain in the bottle. All right. So moving further, Likhat Taraj. What is it? So small amount of cane sugar, which is simple, a sugar cane sugar, or sugar that produced through the sugar cane, and yeast is added in the old wine. Old wine mean to say the wine that we have produced as of now, right? And then this is required to start the fermentation again. It is so simple, because fermentation process is something which is done or which is being started just with the help of sugar and yeast. So we have added both the things, and definitely our fermentation process will be started, because this is the simplest, easiest method to produce alcohol. And then the wine is transferred into bottles. The moment we have added both the things in a wine that we have produced as of now, then that particular wine is being transferred into the bottles. And that particular bottle is temporarily protected by agrafe, right? So that agrafe is, what is this particular thing? This is a special cap, right? A kind of cork which uh, protects the bottle, or which protects the champagne, that other sediments or the foreign particles cannot come inside the bottle, right? And the carbon dioxide cannot go out. So to protect it with the temporary cap, that particular cap is known as agrafe. And agrafe is a good quality of cork. It is not the a simple or low quality of thing. No, agrafe is a good quality, and it gives a solid hold to the bottle and the neck. And then all bottles are stacked on one another. Again, this is an important point with what I have said in this particular line. Now we have like transferred the whole content in the bottles. For an example, we have prepared 10 bottles. Now all bottles are required to place one another, one bottle on another one by placing horizontally, right? So fermentation, second fermentation used to be start once the bottles are on the horizontal position, not in the standing position, right? And then moving further, the position is called as misserlate, right? So if we have placed five bottles down, and then five bottles, then five bottles, like so on, right? So this particular position is called as misserlate. So what they people used to call, or they used to announce the duty to another, that now we have done with the first fermentation, we have started the second fermentation, put the bottles in a misserlate position. Mean to say, they will keep the bottles, they will take the bottles and they will stack on one another. So now the second fermentation starts about 6 months. So this process will go for 6 months, right? And the temperature is required 10 to 12 degrees Celsius. So the temperature which is required to maintain over here for the second fermentation, it is 10 to 12 degrees Celsius. So this is the particular cork, and that cork, even like most of the students, they have seen now in the market, their water bottles are available, empty water bottles, just for the refrigerator, right? So they have this kind of cap. It is quite easy to get nowadays, like this kind of cap or protection in the normal water bottles. It is now available in the market. So this cap is called as agrafe, right? And now see what is misserlate. So this particular position is known as misserlate. So what are you able to see? Each and every bottle is on one another, and we are required to keep the bottles for 6 months, and dust will be there, and definitely dust will be there, and no one, it is not there is required not to shake the bottle, not to touch the bottles. So that's why dust is there on the bottles, because if anyone will touch the bottle, if anyone do the dusting, then the chances of sediments that we are going to remove from the bottle, the chances of that sediments will mix with the whole wine. So the reason behind why we are lying the bottles in this particular position, because just after this particular step, what we are the next step is, they are required to keep the bottle upside down. So after 6 months, they will raise the bottle. Just let me show you with a bottle that I have. For an example, this is just a bottle, right? This is just a champagne, and it is on a misserlate position. And we are required to keep the bottle for 6 months in the same position, right? All bottles. And just after this step, every production person, what they used to do, they used to raise the angle slowly, right? They just keep the bottle like in this particular position for next 2 or 3 months, right? And then they keep the bottle in this position again for next 2-3 months. The reason behind, once the bottles were on this particular position, which is Miss Sarlati, the sediments were on the this surface. So sediments were on this surface, and after 6 months, they have put the bottle in a special rack. I'll show you the rack also. So that rack keeps the bottle in this position, right? Now what will happen? The sediments will float towards the neck, and then after some more months, they will shift the bottle to another level, right? To tilt, like they will tilt little more, and then the reason behind it, all sediments will come just to the neck, right? And even it would be quite visible to all of the production person that they can see the sediments are being collected towards over here, just near the neck. So I hope you have understood the logic why they have kept the bottles, or why they used to keep the bottles in this particular position, so that sediments, the particle of dead yeast, right, extra yeast, can be settled down, and then slowly they used to tilt the bottles so that sediments can come on the towards the neck. Now see, one more picture is there. See the bottles in a Miss Sarlate position. So what is happening over here? Second fermentation is going on, and they are required not to touch the bottle, not to shake the bottle, so that sediment can properly settle down. And next position would be tilt little more upside down. See the number of bottles are present. So champagne, if the process takes more attention, so they like the production house do not produce only bottles in hundreds, as we have just remember the facts we have done in the previous slides, that so many million, 337 million bottles used to be, right, produced in a year approximately. So this is the position Miss Sarlate, and in this step, second fermentation is taking place, and then remuage. Now, the step has come just after the 6 months of second fermentation, in which we are required to tilt the bottle little more, right? We are going to tilt the bottle in this position, and this thing can only be happened with a special rack, and that rack has a name, and that rack is specially for champagne. So now this position is removing sediment from the bottle by shaking, right? So now what will happen? We have taken the bottle and sediment. The specialist, a worker, which is like which has it is required to have a great skills, then only you can do this particular step. Otherwise, a mature person would, he will do, he'll mix the sediments with whole drink, and then again we are required to keep the bottle for next 6 months, because it, what people say is that it requires 6 months to settle down the sediments. So if anyone will shake the bottle, you are required to keep the bottle for next 6 months. Now, so after 3 days, expert shakes the bottle, right? So that sediments can come towards the neck, and bottles are placed upside down in the wooden rack for 2 or 3 months. So what is there in this point, that earlier the bottle was in this position, and the export will come they will keep the bottle upside down in a special rack, and then after every 3 days they used to shake the bottle, or they used to revolve the bottle, so that if any sediment which is stick to the bottle or any wall, that can come towards the next side. And that particular wooden rack is called as papetress, right? Papetress or puppet. The right pronunciation is like puppetress, right? And it is generally what happens in French. There is no sound of t, right? It is the. So you can pronounce by this way. In France, there is no sound of t. Then the upside down position of bottle is called as Surley point. So if bottle, earlier the bottle was on this position, that position is known as Mr. Latte, and now we have turned the bottle upside down, and now this position is called as Surley point. Now the direction, if anyone wants to give direction to the person, to the expert, that this is the time, change the Mr. Latte position to Surley point, right? So what he's saying, that the horizontal position has to be changed with the upside down position, so that sediments can, the sediments that are settled beneath, that can come towards the next side, because next step is just related to this particular point. So then it is required to keep the bottle in same position for 1 and several years. Okay. So students, just give me a moment. Okay. So what I was saying, so then it is required to keep the bottle. So what we were discussing, that we are required to be on the same position, or to keep the bottles in the same position for 1 or several years. Why several years? Because sometimes sediments are like whole sediments are not being collected towards the next side, right? I hope my points are clear. Just acknowledge me with yes or no. If you want to ask anything, you may ask, because I believe that these points are quite complicated. But once you'll be able to understand the logic, then it will be okay. Yes, Sanjeev Yadav, you may ask.
Yes, sir.
Please, sir, again repeat. I disconnected network issue, sir.
Okay, I'll repeat. Yes, Arjun, do you have something?
No, sir.
Okay.
I got it, sir.
Thank you, Arjun. Okay, so Sanjeev, what we were discussing, that the first fermentation has been done. Now the second fermentation is required to be done in the bottles. So second fermentation is the process, or the mechanism would be same. To start fermentation process, we need yeast and sugar. So the wine that we have produced as of now, right, after first fermentation, the wine is there in the wooden vats. So we have added both the things, sugar and yeast, and we have mixed it, and we have transferred the wine in the bottles, and we have closed it with the special cap, which is known as agrafe. Now agrafe is being placed, right? Now our bottle is protected. Now we are required to keep the bottle in a position, a special position, which is like this. We are required to keep the bottles in this position horizontally, one on another. This particular position is known as Mr. Latte, right? And the reason behind it, that so that the sediments or dead yeast or any other particle which is there in the bottle, or the content, that can be settled on the surface, right? So we are required to keep the bottles in a same position, in this particular position. And after 6 months, a special person, expert, will used to come over here, right? They will pick the bottle, and they keep the bottle, or turn the bottle in this position. And this particular position can only be done in with the help of special rack, because we cannot hold the bottle. We can hold a single bottle, but we cannot hold the single bottle for next 3 months or 1 year, right? So we have like thousands of bottles. So to keep the bottles in this position, we are required a special rack. That special rack is known as pipettas, right? And that particular rack keeps the bottle in this position, a tilted position, so that the sediments that were collected on the surface, they will be get collected on nearby the neck, and that particular position is known as Surley point, right? And then that position is like we are required to keep the bottles in the same position for some one, like we can say that 1 year or several years. It depends upon the satisfactory level or the if sediments are not being collected, then we are required to keep in the same position. Now moving further, Remove. So this is the picture. You can have the idea, and one by one, like bottles are being twisted or shaken so that the sediments are being collected on towards the rack. So these are the racks which are known as pipettas, right? Now, moving further, degorgement. So degorgement is what? Now the sediments are being collected near the cap. Let me show you the picture. Now see the sediments. You are able to see the sediments that are nearby the neck, right? So now moving back to the degorgement step. So what is there now? In this step, we are required to remove that sediments. So to remove that sediments, what used to be happen? Now sediments are there in this area. So if we will open the cap, what will happen? Most of the content will come out. Definitely sediments will also come out, but our content, my wine will also come out. So there is a special technique over here. There is a special machines that being made for champagne, especially for the production of champagne. In the special machines, they refrigerate only this part of the bottle, right? They freeze the bottle's neck, only neck, not the back part of the bottle. They used to freeze the neck part of the bottle, so that the sediments can also get freezed. So, and then they will keep the bottle not in a standing position. They'll keep the bottle in an angle, and then they will remove the cap, and with the pressure of carbon dioxide, the sediments will come out, right? So this is the logic behind it, that why they keep the bottle in a Miss Sir Latte position, then Surley point, and then they freeze the neck because sediments are present over here, and then by keeping the bottle in an angle, and they place the bottle on the stomach, because again, the reason is again this thing only be possible with the expert person. That expert person can perform this duty. So once the bottle neck is refrigerated, it is required to hold the bottle with the stomach, and then they remove the agrafe. So the huge amount of carbon dioxide is present in the bottle. So the pressure is a lot, there is a lot pressure in the bottle, and then the sediments and the refrigerated, the freezed sediments or freezed part will come out. Now, again, it is true that some amount of champagne would also be flown or also be spilled. So there is a step to refill the champagne also. Now, just pay attention to the degorgement one by one, like the steps we'll be covering. So it should be removed by a unique method. So the sediments are being collected and a brine solution which frees the bottleneck, and one has to like keep the bottle on the stomach, and the same way they cut the wire of the agrafe, and with the pressure agrafe will come out, pop up, and the sediments will also come out. Now we'll get a clean wine, right? Then what will happen, as we have this is the picture, like do not pay attention to the remorge. This is not the remorge, this is degorgement, right? But even it is a step of degorgement and remoage. This is like both step, but we want to learn about degorgement with these pictures. That's why I've written degorgement. Right now, see what will happen. The sediments are being collected, and now we have refrigerated the content. See the refrigerated content. So bottleneck is there, and sediments are being collected. Now it is ready to pop up. See, with the pressure of this thing, the person has cut the. So what we have done, like the person who is expert, he has cut the wire, and then okay, so then see the pressure is there, and the sediments will come out. Now the dosage. Now why dosage is required, or what would be there in this particular step? Because some amount of champagne is already spilled out. So to fill the spilled out, or to refill the bottle up to the quantity that is required as per the bottle we are filling, and then some amount of champagne is required to be added in the bottle. Again, this is done with the help of expert person. Then it is required to fill that amount so that lost champagne can be filled. So after this, a permanent cork is there to be fixed for the protection, or to keep the bottle protected. So it is then wired and then foil. Now your bottle is ready to sail. So see the dosage. This is how they used to complete this process. And then recorking. Recorking means to say permanent cork would be there and secured with the agrafe. Agrafe is like you have seen the picture. The wire should be there on the cork, and then bottling. And after that, the bottle are given a final shake. And final shake, why there is a reason to do this particular step? Because we have added some dosage, we have added some amount of champagne, and again it is required to mix with the whole content. That's why expert used to be shake the bottle, and then it is required to distribute, or it is ready for the sale. Now resting, we can keep the bottle for 4 or 6 months. Again, why it has to be undergo this particular thing? Because people says in France that wine, after blending or after adding any amount of wine, or if we have added 2 type of wines, it is required to keep the bottles for some time so that they can marry together. This is the term they used to use, that wines can marry together, and that's why they used to rest for some time, and then it is done, right? So anything that you want to ask, you may ask. And Meanwhile, I'm going to launch the poll. So you have to be quick. We have 4 minutes, students. Right. So I have launched the poll. We start answering the questions. As of now, no one has started. There are 33 students and it is required and mandatory for everyone students. Champagne is what? There are only 6 questions and no one has started as of now. Okay, very good. Champagne is a sparkling wine. Okay, best champagne produced with method is Champagne. Very good. Second fermentation is known as. That's good. Like you are giving right answer. Rack to place the bottle upside down is known as stand, which is the wrong answer. Process of removing sediment is called as. Very good. Okay, only 2 students have filled as of now. Students, you have to be quick. Very simple answer. Okay, one of you, 2 of you have filled detergent, and definitely I will check the name of those person and you people will get my call just after the class. Process of removing sediments is known as detergent. This is a quite, I would say, an opposite answer. We have not discussed detergent at all because once you complete the polling process, every teacher used to get a report like which student has given which answer. So I will definitely check the student who has given the answer detergent. We are not talking about the laundry, my dear. This is not your housekeeping class. I think you may like you are mixing this thing. 5 students have filled detergent. Okay. Even after giving a hint, you are pressing this button or you are clicking on detergent. Even I would be asking you that how can you remove sediment in champagne through detergent? If you have a bottle and bottle has some foreign particles, I need, just give me a moment. Yeah, it's okay. Like just after few minutes, I'm going to share the result. Still 6 students are left. Students, you are required, as I used to say or used to tell in every class, that polling and attendance and duration is quite like these 3 things are directly proportional to mark you present. The attendance mean to say the duration you have, the duration mean to say how many minutes, like how much time that you have spent in this particular lecture. And your attendance has already been prepared. I think your coordinator has shown to you, or if it is not, then like she'll be presenting the attendance, the compiled attendance by today, and check the attendance, like the percentage attendance percentage that you have attended till date. And those who have less attendance, like we be contacting your parents. Okay, students, be quick. I'm going to close that. Any like still 5 students are left, otherwise I'm going to close the poll. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. 4 students are still left. I'll check the report, like those students who have given the which student has given which kind of answer, and see, I've shared the result. The first question was champagne is a sparkling wine, not a still wine, my dear. We have paid a lot of attention. We will keep on focusing on this thing, that champagne is something which is known as sparkling wine, and still wine, there are only 2 still wine, or like major 2 still wines, red wine and white wine. So champagne is not a still wine. Best champagne is being produced with the method Champenois, not tank method. Second fermentation is known as liquor de Taraj, not Remuage. Then rack, where we used to keep the bottle upside down, is Papetre. Then process of removing sediment from the bottle is known as degorgement, not the detergent. Dosage is the process to add more champagne, not to drink more champagne. Okay, thank you so much, students. We'll meet in the next class. I believe that you all are preparing your journals, and we'll be checking your journals by tomorrow from Sunny Kumar Ranjan. Sunny Kumar Ranjan, you are required to show the journal before 3 today, right? Thank you so much. I'll be waiting for the journal before 3 today. Thank you so much, students.
Thank
We'll
you,
meet in
sir.
the next class.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Have a nice day.
So, thank you.